Seeing none, I'd like to move the agenda as amended forward. Michael Thompson, Councillor Marakis. Comments or questions about the agenda, the amended agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. For anybody who's not been around the table when I've been here, I do things a little bit differently. Would anybody like to have item number 1 pulled? Winter maintenance? See, okay. Item number 2, placement of light armored vehicle. We've got a delegation to that, so I think it's wise to pull that. Item number 3, application for site plan amendment for 67 Industrial Parkway. Would anybody like to have that one pulled? Seeing none. Item number 4, municipal legislation review, town submission. Would anybody like to have that one pulled? Seeing none. Item number 5, a memorandum from Parks, from Planning Development Services. Anybody would like to have that one? Nope. Item number 6, EDAC minutes. Sounds good. Item number 7, would anybody like to have that pulled? Seeing none. Item number 8, PRAC. Would anybody like to have that pulled? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Could I please have an adoption of the items not requiring separate discussion? Councillor Abel, Councillor Gartner. Comments, questions? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Delegations. Mr. Corkery, I'd love to invite you up. Oh.
Mr. Chair, we have a resident in the audience for the site plan, and it was approved by consent on tonight's agenda. Maybe you could explain that to him.
So it was approved tonight on consent, which means we're not going to discuss it. It will be coming back up next week for a formal ratification. And so we'll be the committee, as we sit tonight, will be recommending next week that it move forward as is. Have a good night, sir. Mr. Corkery.
I'm just too tall. Members of Council, thank you very much for inviting me this evening. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kirk Corkery. I'm a former commanding officer of the Queen's York Rangers. I currently am the chair of the Regimental Council. It is a registered charity that does good works for the soldiers in the regiment and also for those within the regimental family, which includes 2 cadet corps, 1 here in Aurora, 1 in Toronto, a band, 3 or 4 reenactor groups, and also the former soldiers of the regiment. I'm here tonight to talk about one particular proposal to give you a little background. In November last year, the government announced, along with a company called Canada Company, that there would be made available 250 or up to 250 light armored vehicles that could be used as monuments across the country. They were to be used especially in the case where the town had something to do with Afghanistan or the Canadian forces. Generally speaking, not more than 1 per community. That's the intent. The criteria that they are looking at were the ties with Afghanistan, with the armed forces, with sacrifice, with military and defense industries. The location of the monument. Is it in a place where visitors can look at it, access it reasonably? Will it be sustained and upkept? And is there some sort of community engagement with the monument, i.e. a Remembrance Day parade? Why is this appropriate for Aurora? There were 70,000 soldiers went over to Afghanistan during the 13 years. Many of them do have connections to York Region. 158 of them did not come back. Queen's York Rangers, our regiment here in town, approximately 40% of the soldiers did serve a tour over there. We were awarded a battle honor by the Canadian government in recognition of that. I am pleased to report that all of the Rangers did get home. Labs were used extensively in Afghanistan. The ones that we're talking about for the monument, they're decommissioned, demilitarized, the engines come out, the armaments come out, that sort of thing. They were originally built in London by General Dynamics. They're now being refurbished by the students at Fanshawe College as part of their welding program, believe it or not. Out of spare parts, out of these decommissioned hulls. I will stress, because it's a key question that I'm sure Council will get asked, they are not functional in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Here's a couple of shots of what they look like when they were in Afghanistan. As you can see, they're an 8-wheeled vehicle. They're not quite as big as a tank, but some people think of them as a tank. But they're substantial, and they were critical to our people there. The monument itself, that's exactly what you're going to get. So, a great big green boat, as it were. It will be bolted to a concrete pad. It can't go anywhere. Somebody would have to take a welding torch to separate it from the cement pad, but it will be there with the plaque, or one that the town, we're suggesting the town put with it, to commemorate the service of both all of the members of the CF, as well as especially your own local regiment. And since I know it's something that's always on Council's mind, what's the cost? The lath itself will cost about $17,000. Council will pay for that. That's the commitment we made when we've talked to a few of the people in the town. The transportation and delivery, $4,000 to $6,000. We will pick up that cost. The concrete pad, the pedestal for the plaque, and the plaque, per the report from Al Downey's staff, is about $15K, and we're hoping the town would see fit to pick that up. Timeline, we originally were hoping, we would love to have got it in for this November. Just wasn't possible. They're having some delivery issues. Up until Friday, I would have said we were looking at March, April. We're now looking, I think, probably late summer next year. So given the rate that some government programs go, maybe we're looking at next November as the date to commission it. But that's what we're looking for. So we're hoping that Council will approve. I'm more than open for questions, but I wanted to make sure I kept it under by about 3 seconds, my 5 minutes. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you keeping it under time, and I always appreciate having you out. I'll take a motion to receive and refer to the item. Councillor Gartner, Councillor Humphreys, comments or questions? Councillor Gartner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for coming. You mentioned the cost of $17,000 for the vehicle. Has the town already committed that amount of money?
No, I'm not asking the town to commit any of that money.
Okay.
That is something that Regimental Council, we believe in the project, we will fund. So we're going to fund the monument. We ask the town to fund the place where the monument goes.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. You know, you said how many troops unfortunately didn't come back from Afghanistan, but there were also serious injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder. So we thank the troops and the Queen's York Rangers in particular for participating in that campaign.
I will pass your thanks along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Councillor Gardner asked the question. The reason is you said council had approved 17,000. Of course, I was one that thought our council. But you did say regimental council.
Regimental Council, yes. I'm sorry. I should have chosen my words perhaps a little more closely. Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, when we hear council and money, we all kind of. It's budget time. The tires are going to be, is there any maintenance we have to inflate them or anything? Would they, like most tires, deflate?
My understanding is they are going to be filled with a substance that prevents them from deflating.
Great.
So that, to my knowledge, the only maintenance that we required is cutting the grass around the edges of the pad. Should graffiti or something, it be a target at some point, every once in a while, you're going to have to touch up the paint.
Well, that's not an issue.
I'm not expecting really much more than that. 150 years from now, when it's rusting like all long-term monuments do, let's come back and reconvene for that discussion.
Thank you. I'll see you then.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for joining us this evening and presenting this amazing opportunity. I'm absolutely in support of it at this point, and I hope we get support around the table. I think I'd like to thank yourself and council for selecting Aurora for this site. I mean, obviously we have the Queen's York Rangers here in our hometown, and just in terms of the place, the cenotaph is just such a beautiful place of honor, and where we can go and remember all the soldiers that have fought and not come back and have come back. And in particular, that land has a little bit of history in my husband's family, where it was farmland way back when, and her father owned that land, and some of it was given to way back when the town to share. So to have this continued honor in that area with, you know, a vehicle that helped protect us, I think is, do you call that a vehicle, or
It's a vehicle.
whatever
Yep.
it is.
Yep.
I just want to thank you very much for me, and thank you to council for picking up a lot of the costs to get this here. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much, Council.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Corkery, for coming. And I'd also just like to echo Councillor Humphrey's remarks, and thank you for selecting Aurora. I think this is really an excellent idea. I mean, Aurora does have a connection with the Queen's York Rangers. I believe the regimental church is Trinity Aurora, and certainly we want to support our veterans and our regiment. So we really appreciate that you bring this forward, and I also hope that it gets support from across the table. So God bless you guys.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for coming tonight, Mr. Corkery. It's really an honor to have you here, and we're, as you've heard around the table, we're all very proud the Queen's York Rangers call Aurora home. My question to you really is around the Royal Canadian Legion and any conversations you've had with them and sort of their response to having the vehicle in Aurora.
They are in support of it. In your package that was distributed as part of this meeting, there is a letter co-signed by the President and the First Vice President expressing their support for this project. It makes sense. We discussed with them the possibility of whether the vehicle should be placed out front of the Legion, but that does not meet the criteria of the gifting agency, as it were. Being on Yonge Street, being next to the cenotaph, exactly matches their criteria. So, thank you very much.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the distinct pleasure of representing the town early part of the summer when Mayor Dahl was not available, and so I represented the town on his behalf, and it was my first time being exposed to the Queen's York Rangers, and it was a very educational experience and a wonderful experience meeting the young men and women who serve in the Queen's York Rangers. And, you know, something as symbolic as this, you know, I think it's a great honor to have this monument put in place in Aurora to commemorate those who served and those who suffered and those who continue to suffer. You know, especially during budget time and you know, we're always cost conscious. You know, I did have a couple of cost related questions, but then I was quickly reminded when my wife asked me a couple of years ago why we're not going ahead with our 10th anniversary event, and I said it was too expensive, and then she really lambasted me, and so I'm reminded of that in some occasions cost shouldn't matter. Like an anniversary, I think something like this that should be, you know, it's so important to remember that you can't really put a cost to it, and so I'm not going to ask those cost-related questions, and I fully approve this, and I thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
I share the comments around the table, so thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All in favor of any opposed? That is carried, so we'll deal with that item shortly. Any presentations by the committee chairs? Seeing none, I would ask that we bring forward the items 2, 1, and 6 in that order. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Marakis, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. So item number 2, I'll be looking for a mover. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Marakis. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson?
Just a question around funding source, so perhaps through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, what's the intended funding source?
We apologize that we missed that in our reviews. The funding source we're recommending would be the Parks New Capital Reserve. It's got a current balance of $583,000.
And I appreciate that. I guess my thought was I was also thinking about maybe the council's discretionary fund within the hydro reserve due to the community relevance of it. If that was a suggestion, would you feel that's an appropriate use of that fund as well?
We could use the council discretionary reserve fund. It's a 2016 funding. We could use the interest component from the 2016 portion. Absolutely, if that's the will of council.
That's my thought. Happy to hear others around the table. I'll leave it at that, but obviously I'm in support of it all.
Any other speakers? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I support Councillor Thompson's suggestion for the funding source.
Councillor Thompson, would you like to put that amendment on the table?
Happy to put that forward. The source is the council discretionary reserve fund, which came out of the hydros.
Seconder, Councillor Gardner. Any comments or questions on that funding source? Seeing none, all in favor to the amendment? None opposed. That is carried. So to the actual item as amended, any other comments or questions? Seeing none.
Can I just get a recorded vote? I'm not going to be here next week.
No, we can't do a recorded vote because it's not an official vote. We're putting a recommendation forward. So, all those in favor? Seeing none opposed, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, sir. Item number 1, Councillor Marakis will move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Humphreys. Comments or questions? Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. And on page 2 of the report, we have some performance results, and I'm just wondering, I would have liked to have seen comparables compared to the year before, and I'm just wondering why we don't have those in the report.
Mr. Simonauskas.
Certainly through Mr. Chair. The KPIs that you see in this report, we developed actually for the first time in this format in last fall. So we don't have the data in this format. We have other metrics that we could bring forward. I don't know if they'd be directly comparable, but we could definitely include them in a future report as a background.
Okay, thank you. I guess just a couple of comments. I know I was looking for some information with the motion when I brought it forward, and we got a lot of complaints during the season. But I like what I'm seeing in this, and I like the move to the thaw rocks. It was a product that we saw at AMO. Councillor Thompson and I don't know if Councillor Thompson remembers seeing it, but there's a lot of unique things about the product. It will save us a lot of money, I think, at the end of the day. And then I think next year when this report comes before us again, I think we'll be able to realize those savings. So I'm happy with what I see in front of me.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the report. I appreciate it. And just in terms of the performance results themselves, on page 2 of the report, or 7, through Mr. Chair, just in terms of, for example, under our primary route performance, average route time, 5 hours. Our target is to get it done in 16 hours. And it says number of target exceedances, meaning that's the number of times we've did better than that. Just want to make sure the term exceedances.
Mr. Simonauskas.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's the number of times we exceeded the 16-hour target. So we basically didn't meet our target in one event. Every other event was less than 16 hours.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, it must be the terminology. I've never heard of exceedances, so, which means we missed the target.
We missed it once.
Okay. Didn't miss and missed it 3 times. Okay, so the target, the way reading it this way, then our target looks like it's something we're striving for and not easily attained. So I like to have our SLAs not that easy to attain, otherwise they're not SLAs. That's fair. I had written some notes on another paper that I don't have with me, and I'm going to look for them. They're almost next week, but I just want to talk in terms of looking at service levels. I know that this is not the discussion for here. This is only for information. But in terms of when we do route cleanup and centimeters for secondary routes and so on. So if I don't find it now, I'll have to save it for next week, and I'll talk to you before then.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. Mr. Simonauskas, just to confirm, Aurora is not the only municipality within York Region to move away from sand. It's my understanding there are others around us that have also gone to the similar process. Can you just comment on some of the other municipalities that have done so?
Mr. Simonauskas.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. So in finding the, in our proposed changes, we actually looked at what other municipalities are doing, and there are other municipalities that use 100% salt on the roads. Vaughan is an example. City of Toronto primarily uses salt. And then there's other municipalities such as Newmarket, just north of us, who use 50-50 mix still. So the trend is moving away from sand. I think where you see more sand application is where you have more rural roads or dirt roads where it doesn't really affect the performance of the roads. But when we're in a more urban area, this is a good direction to be moving in.
And can you also confirm if Richmond Hill has also moved that direction as well?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I understand that's also, Richmond Hill is also in that direction. my sidekick.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm correct, and I didn't hear it yet, but one of the major things that we're doing is we're moving away from the application of sand and going back to more of salt. And there's going to be a cost saving, and that's one of the highlights of this report. And the cost savings are going to come in, of course, the resources in picking up the multiple bits of sand and applying them. So that's during a storm. And then also picking the material up in the spring. And so not only are we saving money, but how is it going to affect the safety? And I think I would just ask that you touch on the environmental impacts, because this council last term, we were talking about salt basins and how it can do things to the environment and all that. So the environmental impact and just an overall on the cost.
Mr. Simonauskas.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. So I guess the best table to look at is probably table 4 in the report, which is on page 5, I believe, page 4. And it summarizes sort of the benefits. And what we're doing here is we're looking at an application rate. When we do our sand-salt mix, we're looking at about 90% sand, 10% salt. So that's almost 4 times the material that we have to apply on those roads compared to what we do with straight salt. So when you take that material, when you take the sand out of the equation, you cut the number of trips to reload the trucks in about half. So that's going to reduce our costs in running back and forth to the yard, as well as increase our service delivery times, because now the trucks are spending more time on the road applying salt rather than running back and forth to the yard. So that, I'm hoping we'll see a reduction in actual time to deliver the services just from that aspect. The environmental aspects are related to the combination of applying salt versus salt and sand, because even though you're adding more salt, you're actually only adding about 25% of the material to the streets. So the amount of salt that we apply, or the amount of sand that we apply, now doesn't have to be picked up off the street. So you have the savings and environmental impact from the sand and its dust that's generated during the springtime, which we do get a lot of complaints from. Removing that material from our storm sewers, because a lot of it ends up in our storm sewers, as well as because it's contaminated, as well as the cost of disposing it in landfill. So we're saving landfill space, and the costs and savings or the environmental impact related to trucking this material both into the town as well as collecting it and moving it away from the town. So Although intuitively one might say that we're adding more salt and that's a negative impact, when you look at the global impact of the whole process from application to cleanup in the spring, this will actually have a net benefit to the overall environmental condition of the town.
Just follow up, Mr. Chair. There's more salt going down, and what is the impact on salt to the environment?
So through you, Mr. Chair, salt is the only practical tool we have to deal with ice and snow. It's recognized as an effective product. There are concerns with salt, however, you have to use something. So where our opportunity to reduce salt application overall is a second option in this report, which speaks to the Thaw Rocks product. Right now, we manage our salt application by applying brine, which is intended to make the salt sticky. The Thaw Rocks product is also coming with a coating on it that actually makes it sticky without having to add another product. So we reduce the use of brine, we eliminate the use of brine, and theoretically, based on the studies that we've looked at, the Thaw Rocks application rate is even lower than what we're applying now. So we'll save an overall application, and the total costs related to application will come down because we're reducing our total tonnage. If I look at the report here, from 3,700 tons to about 2,000 tons. So you're looking at about a 47% reduction in total material applied. So yes, the salt's still there, and we still need to use salt. It's recognized as a product that's acceptable, although it does have impacts. But our whole focus is to minimize those impacts to both create safe roads and manage the environment as best as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm all done.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Mr. Colangelo for the report and for coming to council and wearing a suit. No, it's just that Mr. Colangelo isn't usually wearing a suit when in the service of the town. Is there anything in this report that you would like to highlight for us that we haven't discussed already?
Councillor Gartner, I'm actually not going to direct that question to staff, only because the report was written for council's consumption. I think it's all very important, otherwise it wouldn't be in the report. So I'm not going to direct that to staff. Do you have another question?
I thought that was an appropriate question, Mr. Chair, but then I'll just say thank you to Mr. Colangelo again, and his suit.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Simonauskas. Forgive me if this question was already asked, but so with the reduction of sand use and complement or replacing that with more salt, sand was used for traction. So does that necessarily mean that we're sacrificing traction to get something else, like more melting of ice or snow, and that will in place? Is that it?
Mr. Simonauskas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is exactly correct. With the sand application, what we end up with is a center-packed road. So the secondary roads you'd often see in the winter with still snow on them, and then the dirty, sandy, grit-type traction. What we'll find now is actually the roads become center bare, so there'll be bare pavement in the center of those secondary roads, which will actually be theoretically a service level improvement. So there'll be no snow in the center of the roads versus a sandy grit base in the center of the road. So this is one of those opportunities that's both improving service levels and costing less. So it's the kind of thing I'd like to see more of.
Okay. And regarding the additional 4 seasonal staff that you put in as an option, are they permanent seasonal staff, or are they one-time additions and it's replayed by year on an annual basis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the proposal for the 4 seasonal staff relates to the option of reducing our depth of trigger for the service for the starting of the plowing operations, and it was really just to provide council with additional opportunity if council chose to improve the level of service in that aspect. So if there was a desire to move in that direction, because they're seasonals, we typically hire the seasonals this time of year. They're here for 6 months, and then they're relieved in the spring. So if this was something to be considered, it could be done for one season to see what the effect could be. There's no obligation to those employees to bring them back on a regular basis. Basically, they come for 6 months, and then we reissue a posting the next year for another 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Maracus, I believe you wanted to speak for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to, I know the options in there for, possibly reducing from the 8 centimeters to the 5 centimeters. And I know I was big on that with hearing the complaints, and so was Councillor Humphreys. But like I said, I'm willing to give it that one more year from this report so we can get those comparables, so we can look at it, especially with us transitioning to the thaw rocks. I believe it will give us that bare pavement when we have those small accumulations. Whereas this year, what we saw is that the compacting of the snow, and which caused it to not look as well serviced as we thought it would. And so I'm willing to give it that one more year. Let's see how it goes. Let's get those comparables, and we can compare from one year to the other and go from there. And then if at that time we decide that it's a need to change those levels, then we do it at that time. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We're now on to item number 6. Thank you for, good to see you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say thank you for coming out, but that didn't sound right. So thank you for, good to see you. Item number 6, could I please have a motion for the staff recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Tom, comments or questions about this item? Councillor Kim?
Yes, I'd like to bring this report to the floor, please, as is. Or,
Sorry, I've already got that.
Okay.
But comments or questions?
Yes. So I was delighted to read about the Aurora Business Ambassadors Program. And I have a rough idea of what it is, as someone explained that, kind of briefly summarized the program to me a few months ago. But just for everyone else's FYI, and also to just grab a bigger grasp of the program, can someone from the committee just extrapolate on the program, please?
Certainly. It was actually a program that served in the early 90s. I believe Mr. Mayor was actually one of our initial business ambassadors back in the day. But it's an opportunity for local businesses to sell and pitch the municipality to people who are thinking about coming to Aurora. And it's an opportunity to talk about the good things about Aurora, give a heads up about the things that might not be the best, but you know, how there is a willingness to work through them, and so that everybody can go into the process with eyes wide open. Mr. Mayor, did you have anything else to add about that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, was it that long ago already? Goodness gracious. It was an opportunity. I traveled extensively in the U.S., so it was simply an opportunity if I ran across any business who would be interested in expanding. I had some marketing information. I think at that point it might have been a VCR tape. But with various promotional literature, so it was just an opportunity to tap people who are traveling into other parts of either Ontario, Canada, or North America. So it was certainly a great opportunity just to extend the outreach that we already have.
Strictly a volunteer program, and there's no paid position or anything like that?
No, okay. That's correct. Any other comments? Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. How are the ambassadors chosen? Yeah, okay.
As well as intelligence and so there are a list of criteria that we look with. I can get you more information off the top of my head. It has to do with success. It has to do with Councillor Abel, could you
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, probably the business, do they travel a lot? Are they willing to talk and talk about the successes? They have to sort of fit, or sort of, are they proud? Do they take pride in the community? Those are the kind of ambassadors that we want. We were talking about some wins that we could demonstrate. That was sort of, and then also we wanted also the Chamber of Commerce, as it says in the report, them to participate as well in it, because that was just a slight add-on to the program before it started.
And as it is a group that's going to be representing council and the town of Aurora, it will be vetted through either the EDAC committee or council, I can't remember which. I actually wasn't able to make the last meeting. Mr. Ramuno, do you remember if they're vetted through council or the committee? There is a formal application process that somebody has to go through. Again, I'm happy to get you more information for next week.
Thank you. So we would choose people, and they would also come to us probably through the Chamber of Commerce information, and
That's correct.
could be pretty sensitive if we didn't choose someone that wanted to be an ambassador. So we do need to have very specific criteria.
Mr. Ramuno, would it be possible to expand on that for next week with just a little bit more information?
Certainly, we can provide a memo for council next week
Thank you very much.
on how the program would work.
Any other comments or questions about item number 6? Seeing none, all those in favor? Seeing none opposed, that is carried. I guess next up, new business or general information. Mr. Councillor Marakis, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's through you. I just want to Mr. Simonauskas. I'm just curious on the resurfacing of St. John's between Yonge and Bayview, and I'm wondering if it is completed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did speak with the regional staff who's in charge of that project, and yes, it is completed. They actually went out to take a look at the installation as well and reported that it met their criteria and asked for my feedback. So I did provide the feedback that I received from yourself. So.
Just as a follow-up through you, Mr. Chair, I guess my feedback is that maybe they need to do a little bit more fine-tuning on the road. I mean, I don't want to say it, but it's the workmanship, I think, is at a lower level than I would expect. And there's a lot of extra gravel and asphalt lying around. And so just to say, I'm not really pleased with the outcome.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will report on the condition of the project and just let the regional staff know that there's some additional work that needs to be done there.
Yes, and just following up on that, it's obvious that some of the residents are not happy with the way it's been finished, so take that back as well.
Just briefly, there was a suggested change to our budget meeting schedule yesterday, and I thought that there might have been something being brought forward to this GC, so I'm not sure whether or not the CAO or the clerk want to comment on that, or if it's not necessary, that's fine.
As we're all aware, our general committee meetings, no decisions are made, so I think that's why it's being brought forward to council where a decision is going to be made. Sounds great. Councillor Abel?
I just wanted to comment on the, we had a complaint about the road being resurfaced on Leslie Street outside Magna. It was a regional work. It was a very hazardous, lots of potholes. I contacted Mr. Simonauskas, got a reply back then that day, and it was looked after and repaved the following day. So I want to thank you for doing that. It impressed everyone at work. They thought I did it. But it does work. I mean, we go to our staff, and it's not a regional matter. We have to work with what we have available, and we did get it done with an explanation. And I wanted to mention that we started the cultural precinct, invited council to take part, and I was able to make it this afternoon, so I just was pleased to participate in that, and I thought there were some good ideas. And this item is moving very quickly. So maybe we're going in the right place.
I agree with Councillor Abel. It's great to see some progress being made. Councillor Humphreys?
I'm really sorry I missed the meeting. I do not have it in my calendar. And I wish, my loss, I probably deleted it or something, so I'm apologizing for you guys. Because did I change it? Behind everybody's back? Okay, because I really would have loved to be there. Unfortunately, I missed it. My apologies, guys. I do have one thing. New business. I want to thank Mr. Simonauskas again, if I ever say your name right. I'm sorry, I'm Italian. I should know to say things. Ilmar's better, for me. Anyways, I just want to thank Ilmar very much. I don't know if you noticed, but the sidewalk on Golf Links Drive is finally done. The one going from Highland Greens over to Yonge Street, and the residents are just thrilled with it. It's doing what it was supposed to do, stopping people from crossing the road and the dangerous turn. But great job done. I was wondering how they were actually going to do it, because I was every day, and they were able to do really nice landscaping, really good cleanup job. The trees are all there, and it's a really nice wide sidewalk. So thank you very much. It was really well done.
Councillor Tom, anything?
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you, Mr. Chair, I spoke with Jim Tree about, I had some complaints from residents at the bottom end of Willow Farm about a trail being constructed, so I just wanted to see if you could update council on where, he updated me, but maybe Al or Mr. Downey, if you could update council on where that's going to be coming from.
Mr. Amar?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is now an agreement in place with the owner of the lands. It's scheduled for completion later on this month. With regards to the trail construction, I know Mr. Tree and Mr. Downey were involved with that, but we are in the process of securing that and hope to have that wrapped up very shortly.
Mr. Downey, would you like to add anything?
Sure, Mr. Chair, we are working with the Conservation Authority and the solicitor to secure the easement and meet the conditions of approval by the Conservation Authority. So we have continued to meet with them. We know we have some interested residents wanting to know what's going on. We have materials on site. We have work commenced. However, we are awaiting those two approvals.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last couple of months, I've been working with residents from two different neighborhoods in Aurora about speeders in their neighborhoods and just reckless driving, especially on streets where there are no sidewalks and kids are playing. And so, we were looking at all options and letting them be aware of, the speed cushions program that's going about, but these streets will probably be low priority. So I was doing a lot of research and talking with Ms. Van Leeuwen, and just today I found out about a town-initiated education program called, or the sign says, "Drivers be alert, children at play, please drive slowly." And apparently there's only 1,000 signs available, and I'm just wondering, our town, how did this program take shape, and is there a way that council can be informed of these types of programs in advance? I'm not sure. I think it was corporate communications driven, but I'm not sure if anyone around the table can respond to that at all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am aware of the fact that recently we received this request and there were some inquiries about this type of signage, and town actually are exempt from their own sign bylaw. So if this is a town initiative, then basically there's no regulation requirement. Having said that, Mr. Van Leeuwen suggested that we may want to introduce some sort of time limit around this kind of signage. Mm-hmm. So we are still working with the communication to basically include this in a new handout and put it out there for public.
Okay. No, it's a great education program. I think it's much needed. My only comment is that it would be great if this type of program would be shared amongst other departments, because Ms. Van Leeuwen didn't know 2 weeks ago. And I'm sure many of us receive these types of complaints from residents, so it would have been nice to have known that this program is being rolled out in advance. And also, if you could let us know if I'm sure there's going to be large demand for these signs, albeit on a temporary basis, if there's an opportunity to purchase more, or even if residents are willing to even put their own money in, if there's an opportunity for them to even purchase more.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, we are actually communicating with our communication department, and what we are proposing is that perhaps we can have some sort of time limit around this kind of signage. For example, around August 15 to, let's say, October 15. So just give a heads up to drivers about the start of the school. So, and we can continue working with the communication department on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, obviously, I should be late more often because you get done really quickly. Mr. Moyle and I were downtown today, the Premier Summit, which is a working group that was established earlier this year, and this was our second meeting with the Premier. Before that, we actually met as the GTHA, or the GTAH, depending on what people call it these days, which is all the mayors and chairs of the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, including this time a representative, Mayor Tory from Toronto. And what came out of that meeting was a letter that's being sent to the Prime Minister and the leaders of the 4 other major parties that are running in the federal election, emphasizing the need to work together with respect to infrastructure funding and the partnership that we need to establish, which is not really there. So that was sent out under Roger Anderson, who's chair of Durham Region, and also the co-chair of this group, along with John Tory, Mayor John Tory, pardon me. So there's a number, I'd read them off, but it'll take too long. So we were all in agreement with that letter going forward, and we're looking for some positive response out of the federal parties. We don't expect necessarily to get a response before the election, but certainly representing somewhere over 6 million residents in this area, we certainly hope to get their attention with respect to this. We then went into the Premier Summit meeting with Premier Wynne down at Queen's Park. 3 subcommittees were formed out of the meeting from about 4 or 5 months ago. It was Economic Development, Planning, and Transportation. I sit on the Transportation Subcommittee. And each subcommittee had 2 meetings over the summer with respect to developing some action items to go forward that we could all agree on. So out of economic development, the implementation of a high-speed broadband network was deemed to be the most important element out of economic development. In planning, working with the province in terms of development charges and how development charges are implemented, and specifically what is covered and what is not. So as an example, Mr. Ramuna will tell you this, and I think it came up at the Highland Gate Public Planning meeting last week, is that we collect about 90% of what it actually costs to put a development in. So it is correct to say that current taxpayers are subsidizing new growth. And certainly the goal of many councils, including this one, has been that growth pays for growth. So we're working with the province to try and impress upon them the need for doing that, especially as you get into intensification. Greenfield is a bit of a different issue in terms of funding. Intensification is more important that we look at this. So they're taking that under advisement. And in transportation, there is many items to be looking at, and we spent a wonderful time driving back from Queen's Park. I think it was yesterday, wasn't it? And the issue I think that most of the mayors feel it can really help move us forward is fare integration. So there's a number of different transit systems in the area, and the concept of looking at fare integration so that someone can get on a Viva bus here in York Region and get all the way downtown.
Could you just, it's F-A-R-E, not F-A-I-R?
Correct.
Right?
Fare, yes, the transit fare, the cost to ride the transit. So as some people know, Presto is in place is coming into place in Toronto. So it's the idea of rolling that out, certainly across the GTHA. In terms of doing that. So those are 3 areas that we're working, and we're looking, we look to scale back. There's a number of items that came up, but we looked for each subcommittee to be able to focus on one item that we could bring to fruition fairly quickly. So I will certainly do my best to keep council informed as we go along, and we actually agreed as a group, including the Premier, to step this up from every 6 months to every 4 months. Just in recognition of the urgency that was going on with that. So, and again, my apologies for being late, but I think it was a very worthwhile meeting. I don't know if Mr. Moyle might have anything to add.
I run the meetings.
Sorry.
Mr. Moyle, would you like to add anything?
I think as the mayor indicated, this was being the former executive director at AMO, these were the kind of meetings that you dreamed about. Having the opportunity to meet with the Premier and members of Cabinet, to have frank discussions about the requirement for the province to be better engaged with municipalities. The conversation, I think, was very constructive. I think it was very professionally done. The Mayor of Toronto hosted the mayors and staff for several hours this morning to work on developing a framework for the conversation which took place at Queen's Park. It's, I think it's refreshing, I think, to have government-to-government discussions and have the province listen, or appear to be listening to what's being proposed. As the mayor indicated, the key theme that came from the mayor's group was a sense of urgency. There's been lots of consultations, lots of discussions, but there's the need to get things done. And they identified 3 or 4 items where they simply asked the Premier and members of Cabinet, let's get something accomplished. And that came out loud and clear, and that was expressed by Mayor Daw and the other mayors. And I think that message was heard loud and clear. So it was the only downside was the commute. The irony was one of the conversations was around transportation, and literally when we left at 5 o'clock. It was 3 hours to get back. Yeah, you guys do this every day. And then the other joke, of course, was we were trying to find a parking spot at the City Hall in Toronto. And so I was driving, and I had 2 other mayors and a staff person, and we just kept going. First floor, second floor, third floor. It got very warm because I think we were halfway to the center of the earth, and eventually we did find a spot. But it is crazy, and really it's a good reminder of how lucky you are to live in a place like Aurora, and not down there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gartner. You wanted to add something?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Mayor. Would it be possible for us to have a copy of the letter that's going out to the federal leaders?
Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was, I will send that out later. That was actually sent out today, and is also a link, and we will be using our social media channels to get that out as well.
Great.
And I hope you noticed from Mr. Moyle's conversation that we carpooled going down.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to get you on the agenda. Would you like to move adjournment?
Be my pleasure, sir.
Seconded. Councillor Marakis, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Thanks, everybody.